You made it. Okay. Welcome everyone that is on. We're going to just give everyone a couple of minutes to hop on before we get started. I think once Emily gets on here, let me check real fast. Once Emily gets on, we will make sure that you get all of the materials from today's webinar through the chat, but you should be getting them through an email after we wrap up today. So don't worry about that. We we made the slides. They're pretty wordy, and to do that sometimes on purpose because I figure you want the content. And so rather than just hacking it and you listening to me speak the whole time, I just left the content on the slide so you can do with it whatever it is you wish to do with it. Also know that we have several people who could not attend live. So if you are watching this as a recording, you should see the slides as an attachment in your email. If for some reason you don't, feel free to shoot us an email over at marketing@consultwithkc.com. Emily will make sure that those go out to everyone. All right. I have recruited with me today, Kelsey. Kelsey, do you want to just say hello? Because there's going to be some people who are on and some people who are watching this recording that may not know who you are and what role you play in the group practice.
Hi, everyone. I am Kelsey Bolha. I work in the group practice that Casey owns. As the clinical onboarding director, I work on all of the onboarding, interviews, hiring, and collaborate with our client care and marketing to make sure that our numbers are there.
Yes. And how did you how did you come to be in this role? Because it wasn't like you started in this role. This was something that's fairly recent.
Yeah, I was a therapist and we did something, we all collaborated one day and we're doing role alignment. And there was nobody overseeing this side of things. And so I offered to take on the role and kind of tear everything down and build it back up to the way we need it. And we wanted it in our practice.
Cool. So that's what we're going to get into today. What we're going to share with you, we have gone back and forth over this. This has been at least a 6-month journey, probably a little bit longer, would you say, within the practice. And so trying to figure out how to put this in a 50-minute package for you is extremely difficult, or was extremely difficult. It still is extremely difficult. So the plan here is to give you that 1,000-foot view, because what we're gonna tell you a story today, and as you're listening to different components of this story, I would ask that you think about how this mirrors your own life and your own practice. And a lot of the questions that we asked ourselves during this process of what Kelsey just said, of tearing it all down and building it back up again, we want you to ask yourself those questions as well. There could and probably will be multiple spin-off webinars from this one, because it is that 1,000-foot view and there is so much to get into detail about, which we certainly want to do, but we can't do it in 50 minutes. So over the course of the next 45 days, you'll probably see some follow-up webinars if you want to catch those. We are doing an in-person and a virtual anti-retreat on this topic specifically. If you want more information about that, you can stick it in the chat and Emily can make sure that you get some. But today we really want to get your wheels spinning about your own practice and what you've got going on there. So let's just go ahead and jump in. All right. Kelsey, can you see that? Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna make it just a little bit bigger. No, I won't. I like it the other way. Okay. So you all, most of you that are on this webinar, know enough about us to have some sort of history and background to conceptualize this with. But I started Mindset Behavioral Group in 2015. And since then, there has really never been a time that has just been smooth sailing when it comes to people problems or people issues, whether it's staff people problems or client people problems. It's you would think the clients would be the problem, but in most cases it's really the employees that have always given us a good run for our money. um we've either had, there's been a lot of scenarios. So if, as I'm reading this off, Kelsey, if you just kind of want to watch the chat, I would ask you to just make some kind of notation in the chat if you can identify with any of these bullet points that I'm about to say. Okay, so you could just say me, you could just put something, it does not matter. I just kind of want to see where you all are at. um what about poor quality of applicants? People, practices are struggling to hire because the quality and the level of expectation that you have is just not matching up with the
I see,
type.
hold on. Chat is disabled on their end.
Okay. I'm seeing it come in the Q&A, so hold on. Yeah, I see. Okay. We'll see if we can get that going. We'll see if Emily can fix that. I've fixed it on my side, but we'll see. Okay, so just like raise your hand on your own. We can't see you, but just we'll in spirit, we'll know you're raising your hand. Oh, there you go, Colleen. There you go. That works perfect. You can virtually raise your hand. So poor quality of applicants is a big one. You have good applicants, but they have unrealistic expectations. Like the guy that just applied this morning that lives in another state that wants to make 70 grand a year. And he doesn't really want to do much work. And it was it just doesn't line up. Um, Unrealistic expectations seems like something we face quite a bit in this industry. What about inexperienced applicants that are seeking out more support? Like they're looking to learn more about trauma, or they're really green and they're ready to learn. Maybe you're getting a lot of those, and maybe your practice just isn't really set up to do that. Applicants that come in saying, well, yeah, I mean, I'm okay doing clinical work, but I would really rather focus more on admin stuff. I want to do supervision. I want to do other things. I want to do teaching. I want to do trainings. I want to do presentations. Maybe you're just not getting a lot of applicants in general, but you name it, we've seen it, we've been there, we've done it. In the model that we've had over the course of time really went from a 1099 practice to a hybrid practice, and then ultimately to an all W-2 therapy practice. And there was a few reasons for that, but there was one big reason for that. And the one big reason that we kept migrating and shifting and pivoting and changing was really to keep up with the demand of our applicants. People started saying, well, I really need benefits and I really need this, and I really need more CEUs. And my thought process at the time was, well, if people are asking to be W-2s, maybe I need to make them W-2s. Or if people keep asking for paid clinical supervision, maybe I need to offer paid clinical supervision. If people are asking for money that can be used for continuing education, maybe I should offer continuing education. Or maybe I should be able to give them a stipend or something. If people don't want to come and work in person, then maybe I should just market to people that are all telehealth. Everything that people wanted, we were taking note of. It didn't matter what it was. If it was going to get people interested in working for our practice, we were going to try to do it. And so what we realized was that as we were trying to accommodate and do everything for everyone, um, we really lost sight of what our company is and what we can and what we should do from a financial perspective. It it just got really messy. And before we knew it, Kelsey would ask me a question like, well, why do we do it like this? Well, heck, I don't know. I can't remember. Like it's changed so much. Like everything just kept changing to try to keep up with the demand and trying to keep and lure in therapists that we were just doing anything and everything. Um, I'm sure a lot of you can identify with that because we're always trying to figure out why can't I hire? Why can't I keep people? Why, they always want more pay. They want to do less work. They want all these things. Um, this year, early this year in 2023, we got to a point that I'm also sure that a lot of you are at where I had gone through a messy divorce. We had suffered a lot of losses in the company. Um, and it was kind of like do or die situation. Something had to be done. And we knew that this was happening over the course of time. We could see that the revenue was going down. The margins were going down. The overhead seemed to just continue to go up. And by 2023, we were in this position of, okay, we need to make more money. And how do we do that? We need to make more money. We need to become more profitable. And there's really only one way, and that's hiring.
Can
We
I
have,
also jump in, Casey?
you just take it away.
I think too, for you, like what you were just saying, is like a lot of times there's seasons in our practice where we pivot to accommodate all of the people, but really we need to be pivoting with purpose for our business,
Hmm.
right? Like I think that there's been times where we've pivoted to accommodate our staff in a way that doesn't serve the business.
Right. Because we had lost sight of what it even was.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would have asked me that question a year or two ago, I would have said, absolutely not. I know exactly what we stand for. But when you start really digging in, it became clear that it had become skewed. Um, so when I realized that the only solution to our problem was hiring, I was really bummed out. um, really, really bummed out because I know what that means. I've done it. I've done it for so long. I know that it means lots of energy, lots of effort, lots of time, and lots of disappointment. For me anyway, what when I think of hiring, I put in here just because I think that you all will can understand where I'm coming from, but the people that I think are going to be the best turn out to be the worst, and those that I think have the most potential turned out to be the most entitled. And so like it's almost just like playing a game of roulette. Like you just don't know if you're going to get a good one, if you're going to win, if you're not, like and how much money and time and energy and effort do you have to put into it to just get one good one? So frustrating. I don't know why there's a special introductory price on this slide. Let me go back. I want you to see the good one. Hold on. Okay. So as Kelsey and I were just literally just like staring at each other, thinking, how are we going to fix this? We got to make more money. We know the key is hiring. It's not worked in the past. No matter who we hire, what we hire, they quit. They say there's poor communication. Like there's just all kinds of issues. Um, I just looked at her and said, okay, we're just going to have to draw all this out. We're just going to have to draw it all out. And so we rounded up every whiteboard we could find in the practice, and this is what we made. And so what I want to do today with you at this 1,000-foot view is show you the four main components of what we are doing, what we changed, what we realized, so that you can start thinking about this for yourself. And then in the following webinars that we do, we're going to get into the nitty gritty on each one of these topics and show you all of the ins and outs of it. Anything you want to say, Kelsey, before we?
Katie's asking for if we can get the PowerPoint.
Yes, it will come out in an email after this webinar.
Secondly, I would like to say that this stuff really excites me. I get really all into it. I am constantly looking at these, trying to figure out what we need to do to mitigate some of the problems we have.
Right. Okay. So I love dashboards, not as much as Jackie, but when it comes to problem solving and strategic innovation, I have to draw it out. It has to be something that I can physically move around on something. That is how my brain works. You might be fine doing it on paper, but if not, I would recommend something like this. Okay, so let's get going on our first. I don't know why this thing, I think I'm hitting the wrong way. Let's get going on the first whiteboard that we made. We've called this lots of things. We've called this a pipeline. We've called this a funnel. We've called this a uterus. Like, it's been all of the names. But this is a picture of our hiring funnel. And this was actually the first one we started with because we knew that in order to fix our revenue problem, we had to increase the volume. Kelsey and I talked a lot about this yesterday in preparation for this webinar, and I wish I had time to share it with you. I just don't. But how you match up your hiring funnel to the company's revenue goals is really important. And so I'll just say this for now, and we can circle back to it later. If no matter what you're doing when it comes to your hiring system, always make sure that it is supportive and reflective of your lifestyle congruence and the revenue goal of the practice. You cannot forget those two things. They go hand in hand. But we'll get more into that a little bit later on. So what we did, we used Bamboo HR for hiring, and it's great. But like I said, I needed something more visual. So what we did is we got some magnetic dry erase tiles, Amazon, love them. And we just started placing them in different sections on the funnel based on where they were coming from, how many applicants we had, all of that. And so, Kelsey, do you want to say anything about why you chose to break it down this way before I get into the realization once we put everything in an actual funnel?
I might be giving away some of your answers, but I can answer. So one, I think that this is important because of how our onboarding is structured. We meet with them once a week, and so it can kind of say, all right, with Paige, I only have one more meeting at the very bottom of the page. So I need to make sure that everything's good and that there's certain people in this pipeline, like if they're not doing their jobs, well, they have 90 days to prove to us that they have the skills to match our company. But then also pairing this with marketing and client care. That's something, Casey, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, there is such a connection between our marketing department and our client care department and our hiring department that we needed a visual so that everyone can see. I'm trying to think of how to explain this so that everyone can see what's coming. So, for example, this hiring funnel is broken down into leads or applicants, interviews with offers, offers that are accepted, and then the onboarding phase broken down into 30, 60, and 90 days. So think about it for a second. If you are in the marketing department or in client care, and you look at this hiring funnel and you see that there are 6 people who have accepted offers. And for us, full caseload, we try to be around 35 or so. So full caseload, 35 times 6. Are you on track to have that many client leads coming in? And so what it's doing is it's giving the marketing department enough of a forecast to know how many leads they're going to need to generate within the next whatever time period that we're working against here. Right. Same thing with like the onboarding phase. And so there's certain services that we don't let our clinicians do for clients until after they've completed their onboarding phase, different types of assessments, certain types of work. So client care knows that, hey, I've got one person down here in this 90-day mark. I'm getting ready to move her over into a successful completion of 90 days. Then she will be eligible and I can assign her assessments or anything else in that way. Anything else about that, Kelsey?
Just going to the like people that are at the bottom and about to complete, like, have we in our interview process, we talk about like, hey, we want to really prepare you and make sure that you're full by the end of that 90 days. And so have we made a commitment on the promise that we made to them? So we're kind of looking at, do they have enough clients to sustain them through the next 3 months without me as a support?
Right. One of the things that we realized, so when we drew this out and we put everyone's name on there, it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that for us and our company's financial goal and my personal lifestyle congruence needs, that right now and probably for the next 6 months, we are going to need people evenly distributed throughout that funnel at all times. Kelsey had a goal. She had to hire 10 people in 90 days? Yeah. And so when she had a specific goal, we were watching these people move through that funnel. And it became so much easier and so much more tangible and so much more realistic when we started seeing them move down. And tell us the outcome of that.
This is actually what you're seeing is the 90 days. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 14, 15 people in 90 days. They're spread out with very much, like, I was very intentional on like, okay, I'm going to onboard these two because this is the need for the company. We need a couples therapist. We need somebody who does substance abuse because that's the referrals that were coming in. And so I did it with a lot of intentionality, and yeah, that's what I have to say.
Okay. So what she is also saying there is that because we need people distributed evenly throughout that funnel, that means a couple of different things for us. One, as a practice, it means we need someone in charge of that. We need a designated person. If it is this time consuming and this vital to the success of our growth, we have to have someone that is responsible for that. And that's where she came into play. Also, we realized that over the course of time, if you look back in the last 2 years, which was a point of struggle in different ways for us, um, the hiring funnel was not evenly distributed. We knew that there were times that there was no names in the funnel at all, and that was really scary. And I've been saying this a lot here recently, but um, we instead of keeping the boulder moving, we were pushing and stopping and pushing and stopping and pushing and stopping all of the time in our hiring system, which that it's just pure physics. It takes too much energy to start and stop all the time. And so what we had to realize is keeping a steady flow of momentum going into our hiring funnel. And then we could certainly go in and do a major push. Like when we hired, what did we onboard? Like 6 at one time or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we needed to. It was a lot easier because the boulder was already moving. And so to speed it up did not take that much more energy. Now, this one, um, this is our second board, and this is something I would recommend you doing as well. Um, we stay pretty on top of our numbers. We stay pretty on top of our productivity. We stay on top of all of that. We have a dashboard for everything. But I needed to see it on a board. I needed to see it like on an actual board. So what we did is we created a productivity diagram based off of our pay structure. And so you may have to shift this, you may have to come up with a different way to do it, but ours is based off our tier structure, which is a tier 1, 2, and 3. So tier 1 is based on your billable hours. It's the lowest tier. Really, nobody should be in tier 1. Tier 2 is kind of that middle of the road, and tier 3 is where they should be. I think it's what, an average of 20 billable hours per week or more, which is where everyone should be in order to be full time. So as you can see in this picture, the orange, you can kind of forget about those because those are case managers. And so they have a little bit of a different situation. But if you look at the board, the majority of the people were in tier 2. We had one person in tier 1 and 3 people in tier 3. And so as we were looking at that, these were just some of the things that we said. So most people in tier 2 only lacked a few billable hours in order to be bumped up to tier 3. Why they didn't light a fire under their ass and be like, oh, I only need one more hour to make like $5 more an hour. Let me just figure that out. They were not thinking that way. So we were able to realize that these people were not all thinking strategically at this point in time. Several clinicians in tier 2 had at the time previously expressed that they needed to make more money. So we knew that the desire was there. The majority of the clinicians in the category were trained by a former employee who we later realized didn't really have the best leadership and or training skills. And so these people who were hired on were really we were doing them a disservice. Um, then we started asking ourselves, who trained the clinicians in tier 3? Let's focus on that. Who trained them? What did they do differently? And how can we do more of that? We didn't have a lot to pick from. We had 3. So we didn't have a whole lot to go off of. But we really wanted to look at them and just analyze that a little bit more. We also asked, who's working with the clinicians in tier 2 to help them, especially those that were so close? Do we have anyone? Also, I was curious, do these clinicians report having openings? Do they think they're full and they're in tier 2? So this is where we just like brain dumped all kinds of questions. We just laid it all out there. Like, what's going on? How do we get more of so and so? How do we get less of so and so's work ethic? How do we make some meaning out of this? And Kelsey, I'll let you speak to this board.
Yeah, so I think when we were looking at tier 2, we were also just like looking at their schedules, like how many biweekly clients did they have versus weekly. And some of the things we notice in tier 3, what makes tier 3 different is, one, the training aspect, but 2, the strategy. Scheduling their clients on a reoccurring schedule, seeing them weekly. A lot of these people in tier 2 had a ridiculous amount of clients, but we're not seeing them more than biweekly.
Mhm. Yeah. They were expending a lot of effort and getting very little in return. Most of them in tier 2, because we had these conversations with them, most of them felt like they were overworked and underpaid. And honestly, they were. Um, Not because they needed to be, but because the way that they were scheduling their clients and the way that, like, everything they were doing was so inefficient.
I was looking, I pulled up a couple people that were hired in about a year ago before, and a lot of them were working 6 days a week, but only billing like 2 hours a day. And if that doesn't stress you guys out, it definitely stresses me out because as a clinician, I like to refine my schedule. I like to shrink it down so I have more time to do other things, but can optimize on the days that I'm spending.
Yeah. So, analyzing this diagram, it really brought about a great deal of questions. And if you are participating in this activity, we want it to bring about a lot of questions for you. It should. It really should get your wheels turning. And they were actually questions that we should have been asking ourselves for a long time. So let's move on to the next board. Okay. So from then we were like, I wonder if the amount of time that people have been with the company makes a difference in whether they are reaching their utilization and productivity goal. Is there what kind of connection can we find here? Because we got to figure something out. So this one's pretty easy. We just made a board that was broken down into less than 90 days, 90 days to a year, greater than a year, greater than 2 years, and greater than 3 years. And we put everyone in these categories. Now, I know the picture is not very big, but if you can see, there is something glaring on that board. Kelsey and I, once we put it up here, we just looked at each other and just shook our head. We both knew exactly what it was. We were both 100% on the same page. And she said, "Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" And I was like, "Uh-huh." Uh-huh, I am. Um, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the 2 year mark. And there's no clinicians in our 2 year mark. Actually, that's an intern who is going to be hired on in January, that pink colored thing, but it was kind of scary. And so we were looking at leadership in certain points, and who was doing the onboarding, who was hiring, who made the promises to people.
Who
Yeah,
support who was acting in that support role, that supportive role?
yeah, and also like the under the 1 year mark too is a little alarming because some of those people are from me hiring them. Um, we just didn't have anyone and we weren't moving the boulder. And another thing that we noticed is in that year mark, over the year mark, all of those people were hired at the same time. It was not a situation where we were moving the boulder in that whole year. It was like one initiative to get people hired to open an office.
Mm.
So just seeing things, mitigating some problems, but also like looking into the future of how we can fix this board.
Right. Because really, we also want to see this evenly distributed. And as we started going through each of these levels, because at this point we're focused highly on retention of staff. And so I'm thinking, okay, the greater than 1 year mark, I did not hire anyone in that little spot, but I did make a very intentional effort to take all of them out to dinner when we hired them, to build a connection with them. So there was definitely a link there of just that relationship, like building that rapport with the staff. So that was good to see that they were still there. And then as we moved up to the 3 year, we also noticed that um a lot of those people in that category also had a close relationship with leadership with me. Not all of them, but a great deal of them did. And so it led to a lot more questions. And so we just started hashing these out. Who hired these people in each of these categories? Who supported these people? Who is supporting these people? What kind of people, the people that have been here the longest, what do they all have in common? What kind of employee are they? Do they like to do it that just be on their own? Do they need a lot of support? Do they want to work with others? Do they not? Um, what kind of personality do they have? Like, what are they working toward right now? And are we screening in our hiring process to hire more people like we have that are doing well? Um, just lots of questions with this tenure diagram. Lots and lots and lots of questions, and a lot of epiphanies that were coming up for me, and I know for Kelsey too.
Christy has some questions if you want to quickly answer them.
Sure.
Can you see them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Let me start with this one. Christy, does your tier one make more for all sessions or only for sessions over? It's for all sessions. So it's, I know the model you're speaking or questioning, but if they, let's say they have 15 billable hours in the pay period, whatever the tier one rate is, let's say it's $30, they get $30 for all those hours. They don't get a different rate for the hours in that category. It's all or nothing, the way that we have it set up. And then let's see. And I'll answer that next one here in just a second, if that's okay with you all. But if you do have questions, you can stick them in the Q&A because I can see them. Okay, so here's like this is something I want to make sure that you all see, because this is so important. So we had these 3 boards at this time, and it was great information. We knew we had a lot of work ahead of us. We had to do a lot of things differently. We mostly knew that we needed support and we needed a system, something that was predictable, something that was scalable, uniform, all of the things. But it just felt like something was missing. We needed something, and how do we support all these people? And if we just hired 14 people and we're going to hire 25 more, what are we going to do? You know, it's just us. There's not a ton of us, so what are we going to do? And so as we started just really looking at this light bulb went off. And we realized we had honestly been doing everything wrong. um in lots of ways, lots of ways. Wrong for us. It may have worked for other people, but for us and what we were doing was not working. Okay, so here it is, and then I'm going to show you the board. Let me make sure I didn't want to give it away. Okay, one, we had people in leadership roles that weren't leaders. Whose fault is that? Mine. I had inklings they weren't leaders, but I let it go on for too long. They didn't have the accountability that they needed. They didn't have the oversight that they needed. And most importantly, I wasn't teaching them how to be a leader. I wasn't teaching them how I wanted them to lead the team. And I thought because they were in a position of leadership, that just means that they knew that they needed to lead. When in fact, the majority of the leaders that we had in place during those critical moments were doing nothing in terms of leadership, which was contributing to the problem. The 2-year gap, obvious. The biggest thing we noticed though is that all of our staff, when we broke them out onto that board, they all needed different things. So some needed more clinical training and support. Some needed help with scheduling and efficiency. Some needed to be working towards something. Like they needed that shiny object up here to be working toward. And then some needed everything. And we didn't have a system in place in order to meet those needs. And I think that is where and when we were losing people in our own hiring funnel. So this is kind of what's come to be. And now some of these words might change a little bit based on your practice and the type of practice that you have. And, you know, if you have a more specialized practice, this might look a little bit different for you. But we drew out these phases of employee development. And in the past, we were treating everyone the same in a lot of ways, like, oh, you need help with this. Okay, here you go. But we weren't focusing and we weren't putting them into groups. We weren't putting them into these categories so that we knew who was where at any given time. So now in the first 90 days of employment, we are really focused on acclimation. And so that is the goal is acclimation to the company, to the culture, to the systems, just to all of it. Is clinical expertise important during this time? Sure, but it's not what we're focused on. We're teaching them how things are done within the company. So we're acclimating them to everything. That's what Kelsey's doing. She's teaching them, yes, but most importantly, she's acclimating them and she's doing it in a way that doesn't blow them out of their tolerance window. Because before, I think it was either people were really good and could get it, and we weren't keeping up with them, or they were really struggling. And the more we tried to teach, the more we would just blow their mind. And so we were just not meeting them where they were. Um, After that first 90 days, they will have an evaluation. We haven't started this yet, but we're going to very soon. We're going to assess them on a few different things, clinical competency, even though that's not been the focus up until this point. Scheduling, we're going to evaluate them on utilization, on their productivity, on their ability to work as a team, and their growth, where they started versus where they are at the end of the 90 days. That's when we will determine if they are employable beyond the 90 days. In the up to 1 year mark, we're continuing to focus on acclimation, but we're also teaching and strengthening client retention. We are looking at helping them understand and learn how to start sessions, how to close sessions, how to schedule efficiently, how to document based on scheduling needs and all those. That's really what we're focused on in that first year. At a year plus, we move into even more into utilization, and then we're focusing on clinical refinement. Okay, this is like where we're honing in on those clinical skills. 2 years, it's more about clinical and strategic growth. That's where we're teaching them to focus. Let's figure out what it is you want to do and let's stay with that. Also, by this point, they're getting their independent license. This is another hole in our funnel that we recognized that we will have to get more into later. But once people made it to the 2 year mark with us, they were piecing out. And so we had to really look at that and think about what do people want at that 2 years? Do they want to be on autopilot? They just want to be left alone. They want to do their job. They want to go home. Or are they looking to grow professionally in leadership? And so having to think about how we're going to integrate a process into our system so that we can evaluate our people at that 2 year mark, have a conversation with them, find out what they're wanting to do, so that we can either say goodbye and continue hiring or really continue to invest in them and hope that they stay with us longer. These phases of employee development are huge because it once we were able to stick their names beside each of these levels, we realized that we were supporting some of them wrong. We were focusing on the wrong thing. Kelsey, anything you want to share?
Also too, what we noticed is like at the 2 year mark, we were putting out a lot of fires and spending a lot of clinical admin time that should have been mitigated in the first year. And so we were putting a lot of money on the back end instead of putting it on the front end just to train them. That's just something else I was noticing.
Right. And so having that conversation at that 2 year mark, which we just started doing that, was really helpful. I mean, here we are spending all this money and time credentialing people, and then they already know if they're going to go or not. And so really thinking about it like that. So taking all of these things into consideration, that last board, the phases of professional growth, um, felt like it was just the piece that we needed. It was that missing piece to help us understand. So here's what we did. We simplified and sped up the process of hiring, and we put one designated person in charge. Who is that? That's Kelsey.
Me.
How is she held accountable? She's held accountable by she has specific goals and she has deadlines for those goals to be met. Um, so far she met those goals. How is she I know some of you are thinking, well, how is she paid? She is a salaried employee. She has a 15-hour per week, billable hour per week minimum, and then she spends the rest of her week doing this. She gets bonus after they successfully complete their 90 days, which is what, $100? Okay. So $100 a person if they make it through their 90-day period, and then a $500 bonus after their 12-month mark. And so, when you're hiring 14 people in 90 days, that adds up. But that is first thing we did. I needed someone to own this. You say sometimes, Kelsey, something about rocking the baby. I needed like someone to rock the baby and know that the baby was being fed and rocked and burped and their diapers were changed. And I think that was a part in the path that we were missing. We had people that were supposed to be doing it, but they weren't. And me as a leader, I need someone in person. So I need someone in my office. So I said I would never hire anyone virtually to do administrative work for me again. Therefore, we had someone here in person. Second thing we did is we invested heavily in building caseloads and giving them the support that they need. And I'm going to let you speak on this quickly, Kelsey, because when Kelsey stepped in to be the onboarding coordinator, she didn't know it and I didn't tell her, but she really also stepped in a way where now she is supervising informally our client care coordinator and our marketing director, because she has to work so closely with them in order for her clinicians that she has hired to be full.
Yeah, people on that one tier mark real quickly. They we had no clients to give them because nobody was doing the marketing. So every time I'm hiring somebody, I'm like, can we commit to this? This is how many hours they want a week. And I want to know that we can commit to that and get them at least, hired somebody 2 weeks ago and they got 50 billable hours in their first paycheck. So yeah, like just making that commitment and being strong about it and very intentional with marketing and client care.
And I'll hear her say, I need 200 leads by January 1st. So there's always this exchange of communication about need. So much so that client care and marketing loved Kelsey's funnels and boards so much that they made their own. They made their own old-fashioned CRM with all the clients coming through the intake funnel, and it's actually really nice to be able to walk in the room and see it on the wall. It's helpful. And then the last thing we go
They're
ahead.
probably sick of us asking, okay, how many leads came in today? What are we looking at? So they put it on a board so we could just see it.
Yeah, so we would shut up. The last thing is we went back to our existing employees, especially the ones that were in that 1 year mark, and retrained them. And Kelsey went back and retrained all of them individually. And it was unbelievable how little they actually knew. I think our newest hires were already more successful than the people that have been here a year. They really just needed that more intentional type training.
And it's offering that direct line of communication for them that they haven't ever had.
Right.
So it can be 2 meetings or it can be ongoing.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, like this is a lot of it's a lot of brain power that goes into this kind of conceptualization. And what I would really caution you against is just going straight to, well, I'm gonna put more money into my Indeed ad. You have to look for the core of your hiring issues. And that's why we've made out all of these boards, was so that we could make sure that what we were spending our time and energy and money on fixing was actually going to fix it. It wasn't just going to slap a band-aid on it.
And I think if you would have asked us 2 years ago what the problem was, we would have said, well, we're not having any applicants. But that's
Right.
true. That's the farthest thing from the truth. When we actually started digging, that was not the truth at all.
Right. Right. Um, so I want to go through here and answer these questions for you. Um, and I did not mean to do that, whatever I just did. Um, Give me 1 second. I want to answer these questions for you because there are a lot of them. And I want to make sure that I'm hitting on all of those. I'm going to leave this screen up because this is what Emily was talking about earlier. Okay, let me go through here. How do you address retention issues when they are related to employees wanting pay and other benefits that aren't financially feasible to give? I mean, you can't. It's like if you want to make 70 grand a year and you want to work 10 hours a week, this is just not the place for you. One of the things we did is we tried to standardize that a little bit more by putting a pay calculator um, into their we do that in the beginning in their interview whenever we're hiring Kelsey and Kayla. We have a payment calculator where they can type in how many hours they want to work, how many, like all the numbers, and it spits out what their salary would be. We also have all of our clinicians on their timesheets. They have their own individual dashboards, and there is their own payment calculator based on their specific pay rates on there as well. And so that's just a non-negotiable for me. Like when it comes to, I'm not changing the tiers and I'm not changing any of that. Sometimes we can help them look at it differently and realize money that we are investing and paying them that isn't necessarily coming out on an hourly rate on their paycheck. But that's just causing more work than I found to be necessary. Um, is the CRM they made on Google Sheets? I don't think so, Ernestina, but we can I'll take a picture of it. It doesn't have any kind of client name or names or anything like that. It's just initials. So we can get a picture of that and post it. So you can see. Katie says, do you have one person do this and is that their only job? Pretty much. Kelsey does see 2 days of clients, but this is pretty much her only job. And, this is something that you want someone who, what kind of qualities would you say that you would want in a person to do this job?
Well, I'm not trying to brag on myself. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
She's
I
already got a big head.
somebody who's personable, but also I think why I succeed in this situation is I'm always looking for themes like I do in therapy. Is like, what is the theme that I'm seeing, or what is the theme that I hear people telling me? And getting in front of the problem and not behind the problem. Also, just flexibility. Like I'm pretty flexible with my people. I give them a certain time of every week. But if, let's say, Shelby, one of our employees who have been here for 9 months, reaches out and says, hey, do you have time to meet? I'm looking for the soonest available because I want to know what she has to say and how I can help her. So that's what I would say. Just personable.
And someone who is invested, someone who is invested in the success of the company. So I mean, Kelsey's invested, obviously, but I think that it has to be someone that is motivated in some way. And if it's money, if it's money or finances, you need to tie their position to that in some way. Um, Colleen, I'm not sure, but tier one is actually the lowest paid and the least productive. Tier two is the middle, and three is the highest. It's kind of hard to see on that. Do you pay using salary or commission? Neither. We do, well, if you're talking about our therapist, it's a flat billable rate per session based on productivity. So the more hours that they work, the higher rate they get. Hopefully that answers your question there. What's your favorite lead generators or ways to attract or find therapists? Um, Indeed is probably the best one for us. We have run Facebook ads for hiring, and we did get some good applicants in a local way. Now that's in one of our smaller locations. What about you, Kelsey?
I think word of mouth when you hire people and you you go off the promise that you've promised them in the interview, they recruit their friends. That is something I've seen. And actually we couldn't meet a new hires like what they were asking for money wise. But what we did is we just put the offer out there and was like, look, let's see what happens. She actually ended up accepting the offer because one of her friends worked here and we've delivered on our promises.
That's a good point. Yeah, and I think just really having clear expectations on your website. One of the things that people comment on a lot is that our job ad, it just says if you're looking for a company that's going to pay you the most per billable session, it ain't us. Because it's not, like we invest so much in our clinicians in other ways that there's no way that we can be the highest paying and the most supportive clinically. And I wish there was, but as of right now, I haven't figured out how to do that. So I think making your ad stand out and making your company stand out. Ideas for expanding the reach for applicants on addition to that, Colleen, I think would be um, oh, social media, of course. I think that's a good way. If you already have an established social media, that's a good way to do it. Um, Also, your marketing person, if you have someone that's marketing for leads, have them market for clinicians too. It goes hand in hand. Um, our marketing person, we call her Bopsy. She is always doing both. It's that number two, that sales level, prospect and provider attraction, teeter totter. You might as well, if you're marketing for leads, you might as well market for clinicians. Also, quickly, this is going to sound crazy, and this may just be area specific, but we have been getting so many referrals from a banner that I stuck out by the road, that we had made for a Halloween event, that I thought, well, heck, if we're going to have 400 people come to the office, I'm going to stick a banner out there that says, yes, we're taking new clients. And we probably get 3 or 4 calls a week from the banner, that I don't even know how much it was, maybe $100. So, and I will say this too. I was going back and forth with someone the other day about hiring and recruiting, and they said, I'm just spending so much money. I don't know. I can't hire right now because it costs too much. And I said, well, how much are you spending? And they said, well, my Indeed ad is about $500. And I said, how much will a clinician make you in a year? And she said, about 100,000. I said, okay, does that sound like a good investment to you? And she was like, yeah, you're right. So just remember that when you are hiring, this is a whole nother webinar. It does cost money. And you do have to invest in that clinician. And if I have to pay $2,000 to get a good therapist, I will. All right, Kelsey. she's like,
That is right.
she's like $2,000. Phew.
Mm.
You're gonna pay it one way or the other. So it's really just how you're gonna.
Somebody asked a question about addressing retention.
In which way? Addressing retention clinically or retention employee wise?
Oh, you already answered that question, I see.
Okay, cool. Yes, you will get slides. You should get them after this webinar. If you need more information, if you want to come to Kentucky and hang out with us and just tear the shit down and build it all back up, we are doing that in person in January, and then we have a virtual one as well. I think we have two spots left. Let us know if you need to figure out if it's a good fit for you. We can help you figure that out. If you have more questions, feel free to post them in our Facebook group or reach out to us, and then just keep an eye out for the next webinar, and we'll just go a little bit deeper into each of these categories. Sound good? You gotta say later, besties, Kelsey.
Later,
How's-
besties.
See everybody.